Welcome everybody. My name is Greg Zippel. I'm at WashU and help direct the K12 program for neurosurgery. I think many of you know what it is, but it's a NIH program that's run by a group of us within organized neurosurgery, designed to help foster the careers of junior neurosurgeon scientists. But we've used it as a platform to kind of convene a broader group of neurosurgeon scientists from all different levels: medical students, residents, fellows, junior faculty, more senior faculty, all of us who are really find this very important and want to help each other move our work forward and help, especially in our patients. So that's who I am. We have those webinar series that's every other month. That's what this is about. Our next one is when, Sophie? April, you said?
April 21st, and it will be on specific games.
Okay. So we'll let you know. We'll say that again at the very end, just so you can write that down. But our next session is on specific games in April. Our website, K12, the NRCDP website, the K12 neurosurgery website, will have this information on there as well. We also record these, so if anybody who you know might want to hear this but wasn't able to join us tonight, the website also has the audio recording, so you can listen to it there. So it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. Tish Wigand, who is the director of the Office of Training and Workforce Development at the NIH in the Division of Extramural Activities. Tish and the K12 PIs have been working together for probably about 2 years now, year and a half, 2 years. She's a great partner, really cares deeply about neuroscience, about neurosurgeon investigators, and the importance of our work in helping patients moving forward. And she has a couple of folks that she's working with in NINDS. We're going to lead this session. So I'll turn it over to Tish to introduce her group and then to lead the webinar. Thanks, Tish, for doing this for us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I have some slides to share, but I guess if Greg, you want to make it a little more informal to start, I'll say I'm delighted to be here. And I did bring a couple of colleagues from my team, and also we'll get to hear from Dr. Amy Bonnie Adams, the new acting director of NINDS. But first, if my team wants to introduce themselves, we have K-Reza Izadeh and Marguerite Matthews, and I'll show you the rest of the team in the slides, but we'll talk to these guys now. So Kay, if you want to go first and then pass to Marguerite.
Sure. I'm K-Reza Izadeh. I'm a program officer in the training office. I handle mostly our clinician research portfolio. So if you're applying for a KOA to K23 or something similar, most likely I'll be your PO. So do reach out if you're thinking, or if you're in the hopper of applying in the near future, reach out. I'd love to chat. I've also been involved in the NRCDP K12 going back to 2019 when I was working with Steve and Tish when I first joined the office. So I went to the retreat. So I kind of know the population, the neurosurgeon population that you all are within, and definitely very passionate about supporting you all. And Marguerite?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Marguerite Matthews. I'm a program director in the office. I mostly support the earlier career stages. So I support the F30 mechanism, which is a fellowship for MD PhD students at non-MSTP institutions. So I'm working with my team to think more about how we ensure that students, especially at the medical school stage, are thinking about their opportunities and options for them as they're before they even start their career, what options are out there, so that perhaps they're picking institutions that have really cool programs like this K12. And so I also help Tish manage the child neurology K12. So really respect all the work that you all are doing. Thank you for continuing to be in the research workspace. Back to you, Tish.
All right, so I'm going to put my slides up and then we're going to turn over to Amy. Just bear with me for a second while I get these rolling. And is this working for you guys? Yeah, you're good? Okay. All right, so sorry, I'm too far into my slide deck. Always something fun and exciting when I'm around. Okay, so we're going to talk about some updates related to NIH. I'll give you the agenda in a couple of minutes, but really we're going to talk more broadly about a variety of things related to training clinician scientists in the research space and what NINDS is doing, and some of the things that NIH has going on. Here's our agenda. So obviously we're introducing right now. And the next thing we'll do is we'll hear from Dr. Amy Bondy-Adams, our new director. And then we'll proceed through the rest of our talk with a bit of data around the success of some of our programs, as well as updates from NINDS and some other resources that you might find useful as you're navigating the NIH and potentially applying for awards. So with that, I will pass the baton to Amy. So as many of you may know, we have had a recent transition in our leadership at NINDS. Dr. Walter Koreshatz, who is our longtime and beloved director, has moved on, and now we have in his stead and even more possibly just as beloved, but very beloved and wonderful Dr. Amy Bondy-Adams, who is our acting director. And so we invited her to join us to just say a few words of welcome, to introduce herself so the community can get to know who she is. So Amy, if you want to pop on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tish. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to this group. I have had the privilege of working at NINDS for about 13 and a half years and at NIH for over 20. And actually, one of the very first things that I worked on when I arrived at NIH was working with Steve Korn and the NINDS director at the time, Story Landis, in setting up the K99R00 Transition Award for postdocs to move them into research independence, which just goes to say that issues around training and finding new pathways to let more people enter into and stay into research careers has always been really important and part of the most satisfying work that I have done at NIH. I'm a little bit unexpectedly stepping into the acting director role, but with incredible staff like Tish and her training office, I am confident that NINDS will continue to be able to move forward and advance neuroscience. And we can do that most effectively, both advancing discovery and bringing that discovery to the benefit of patients. Involving a variety of different types of researchers with different types of expertise who bring different perspectives and priorities to our research science. This K12 program is one of the programs that I know that Walter and Steve were most proud of. It is really an incredible accomplishment to be able to find a way to integrate neurosurgeons into our research enterprise in such a creative and impressive way that is really, I think, going to unlock some really exciting advances for now and in the future. So thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with you guys. And I just wanted to take a moment and make sure you felt the love from the NINDS Office of the Director and from the Institute as a whole. So thank you all, and thank you, Tish.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for taking time to come and join us tonight. All right. So back to the presentation. We want to make sure that we impress on everyone that even though there have been many, many, many changes at NIH over the last year that I'm sure you're all aware of, and we are very much aware of at NIH, the NINDS Office of Training and Workforce Development is still standing. We are still working hard, and we're still here to help you. This is my team, so you've met Kay and Marguerite. We have a number of other folks. Are actually, interestingly, in this time where a lot of we actually lost a lot of staff, my team actually expanded, which has actually been really awesome. But we have Lauren Ulrich, our deputy director of the team, and then Kay and Marguerite. Elizabeth Stipek is another person. Anyone that's in the pain space may cross paths with her if you're looking at Kay Awards in anything sort of the pain realm. And then we have Jenny Kim and Joe Sanchez, who are just absolutely awesome. But I think the message here, especially to those of you who are still in training, is that you will always hear, your faculty and peers and others saying, if you're going to put in an application, you're thinking of applying for NIH funding, you got to talk to a program officer. You need to reach out to NIH. And I know that that can be kind of overwhelming. It's really, like a black hole, right? Who do you talk to? Where do you find them? How do I contact them? But certainly that is great advice and sound advice. And you'll hear us say it again and again. Definitely reach out to you or reach out to us. And I would say any of us are available. It's our job to help people navigate the application and funding process. So any question, any issues that you have, you can feel free to reach out to any of us. And I think, you might be like, I don't know who to reach out to. Well, now you have someone. You can reach out to anyone on my team and we can help you find who you might be looking for, or someone that can help you if we can't help you ourselves. So do reach out to us. We're here to help. The lights are on and we're working harder than ever and continuing to do awesome things, even in the midst of a lot of dramatic change. So as I noted, we've had a transition in leadership. And one of the things I do want to mention is that, we don't know how long we'll be operating with Amy at the helm, but we are going to be continuing with the priorities that we've had, in the past. Our budget for training and career development grants is going to stay flat, at least for this year. And our priorities continue. We're continuing to try to operate and keep things going as much as we can in the way that we have in the past, in terms of the training and career development space. All right, so I want to start out for really everyone, but really for the trainees. I just want to, those of you that are in training, that are pursuing or thinking about moving forward in a career where, a dual career, right, where you're taking care of patients and you're professionals in that space, but you're also pursuing research. I just want to remind you that you're in control of your career. You're at the helm. Things may be totally crazy. Funding lines may change. Different, the way things are being done. The rules of the game may be changing a little bit here and there, but at the end of the day, you're still in control of your career. People still need help. We still need answers to scientific questions. Patients are still out there with needs and answers and treatments that they're waiting for. So don't forget that, right? You're in control. Things might be crazy, but you're still sailing the ship. The ship is still on the water. And I want to speak specifically to those of you that are already professionals in your clinical career, right? In your taking care of patients, you're already full-fledged professionals. If you're moving into a research space and you're still early in that space, you don't have to know everything. Don't think you're supposed to know everything. Make sure you take time and to know the questions that you might have. This is a time when you can feel free to ask and get answers. So don't think you're supposed to know it all. And don't be afraid to ask questions of us or anyone else around you. But soak it all up, learn as much as you can, and you'll be good. But I think the takeaway that we've been sort of hammering home for the last year is that even though there have been a lot of change, there's a lot of good still happening. There's lots of good things that you can still do. So keep sailing your ship, and ultimately you're going to get where you're trying to go, even though the way there might be a little bit different, right? It could be meandering more than you thought. We also have to always say something at NINDS, and I think NIH, really about mentorship. This is something we think about and talk about all the time. And we're always harping on mentors to be good mentors. But I think we have to remind everyone that mentorship is a two-way street. And so don't think, for the mentees, right, it's a partnership. It takes good mentorship, and it also takes being a good mentee. So just like a good mentor, you got to be a good mentee. Manage up, get your mentor to help you. You know what you need to get where you're trying to go. So do advocate for yourself, ask for what you need, whether it be through mentors, whether it be through people like us at NIH. Do be proactive and don't be shy about asking for what you need. Because again, you know better what you need to get where you're going than anyone else. All right, so I want to just take a moment to sort of orient everyone to kind of NINDS in the space that we've sort of carved out for clinician scientists and for training those who want to move into dual careers, incorporating research. So we'll have a quick overview of kind of what the programs are and how we've kind of created thoughtfully this approach to training clinician scientists, and then look at some data and outcomes from the programs that we support. So under the direction of Steve Korn, who was at the helm in the training office and a mentor and friend of mine for many years, I think he was in the office for about 18 years, and NINDS really responded and worked with the community to create this sort of comprehensive approach to supporting research training and career development for clinician scientists. And you can see on this slide sort of the menu of different programs that that we've stood up over the years, and that have been extraordinarily successful. So as Marguerite noted, there's always been the F30 under the National Research Service Award, or NRCDP fellowship program. So NINDS supports MD, PhDs under this F30, but only at institutions that do not have an MSCP program that's funded under NIH. So we have the F30 at that level, and then we created the UE5, which used to be an R25 for residents and fellows. I'll talk a little bit more than that, but really the idea here is to get folks started, really to give them funds for protected time so that they can protect their time to do research during residency, and also a couple of other increments in fellowship to prepare them really to get to a K award. And these are programs that are around the country and have been very, very successful at doing just that. We had for a while 2 flavors of K12s, the neurosurgery K12 and the child neurology K12. And we, I guess in 2024, launched an emergency medicine K12. So this is for folks in the emergency medicine space that are doing research that's sort of neuro focused. And that has launched to resounding success. And these programs have done awesomely, as you'll see when we look a little bit further in the slides at some of the data. Of course, we support some intramural NINDS clinicians under a K22. So those are folks that are doing research at NINDS. And then, of course, we have the K08, K23, the bread and butter. And then we have a K02 that's for folks that are not quite ready for an R01, but will be very soon, but are a little bit beyond, or maybe have already had a K08 or K23. Of course, I always have to highlight, and Kay will talk about it later, but the loan repayment program is there to help individuals with educational debt. And then we also have these continuity supplements, which I think are good to know about if you're on a K award. So if you have like a K08 or K23 and you need to step away from your research for a little while, it could be for, some it's called critical life events. So it could be for childbirth or for taking care of a family member or some other such life event. You can apply for a supplement to really allow you to hire a technician or other individual to carry on your research during the time that you might be have to step away from the bench or from your project. So it's a nice program to know about. It's reviewed internally, and I don't know that we've ever denied any of the requests that we've had for those. So do remember that it's there. Okay, so I want to just talk for a moment about the UE5 and the K12s, the institutional awards that we've created for clinician scientists. And so first the UE5, which this used to be the R25. People still think of it as an R25. People still call it the R25. We converted it to a UE5. It's the same program, but it really was just because of some sort of logistical and operational ways of managing the budgets behind the scenes that made it so we had to change it to a UE5. So it changed. I don't know what it says U25. It's actually UE5. The UE5 is now what was formerly the R25, and this is an institutional award. So it goes to an institution. There is actually one at WashU, for example, and this allows a provision of oversight and accountability because it allows for sort of a team of PIs to be there to make sure that the program is doing what it's supposed to do and make sure that the trainees that are appointed are getting what they need. Right now, we have about 21 active programs at institutions across the country. And really what it is as I said earlier, it provides support for 3 different increments, 1 starting in residency and 2 additional increments guaranteed if you get the first one that you can apply for during fellowship. And for these, you submit a 4-page research, really a research project, along with a little information from your mentor and, kind of a synopsis of what you're planning to do in your career. And then, if you get this, you have this protected time to get work done, right? It pays really just for your salary or for a portion of your salary so that you can protect time to do research. These are competitive. We fund about 60% of the applications that come in for the actual appointees to the programs or participants. And really, this whole thing is a goal-directed program because the mandate for all UE5s is to get anyone that is appointed to the program to a K award. So you have to be able to submit a K award after 18 months of post-residency support in order to get your last month or 6 months of fellowship funding. But really, the idea here is to get everybody to a K, everybody that's appointed, if possible. And here are some outcomes. So you can see these are data from the UE5, and this is looking at individuals who are supported on the UE5 or not. and their ability or their success or not at transitioning to a K award. So that would be a K08, K23. I think K12 is also counted. But you can see that there were 86 K awardees at that time that did not have a UE5 or hadn't been part of a UE5 or had been part of a UE5, and 200 that hadn't been part of a UE5. The success rate is actually better for those who had this time of UE5 support, protected time to do their research, to get stuff kind of going and build a foundation before applying for the K. But I think the most striking thing that the UE5 has accomplished is that it's reduced the time in training for participating scholars by nearly 3 years. So the time to K is dramatically different if you're able to get onto a UE5 program or compared to those who haven't. So I would just say that if there are med students that are thinking about research careers, you can take a look on our website and you can see a list of all the different institutions that you might be applying to for residency or thinking of going to for residency that have a UE5 program. It's a good thing to know because it might be something you want to take advantage of as you plan for your future. We also have the K12 programs, as I mentioned before. These are national programs, again, with national oversight. These are for individuals that are a little bit further along usually in their research careers than those on the UE5, but still not ready to be independent. And often are still, even after the K12, often do still go on to get a K08 or a K23 prior to getting an R01. But again, this is another program where the mandate is to get people to a K award. And to date, more than 80% of the scholars in both, we only have data so far from child neurology and neurosurgery since emergency medicine is so new, but over 80% of the scholars in both of those programs have received major subsequent research funding from either NIH or private foundations. So these are really great programs to take advantage of and to be aware of as you're planning for your careers. They're doing awesome things, and we're very excited to, even with all the changes at NIH, keep them going into the future. So now I'm going to pass the baton to Kay, and he's going to talk about individual K awards since these are the awards that he primarily manages. Kay, if you want to take it away.
Sure thing. Are you going to still drive for me? All right, thank you. All right, one thing I'll just say before I start delving into data, just about why we're presenting this. This isn't just only to sing our praises and sing the praises of the folks that we funded, but it's kind of what we do in the office. It's one of our routine tasks is to demystify the pursuit of NIH funding at NINDS. And and to be good stewards of these programs. We want to make them open to everybody, make everything transparent so you understand what you're getting into when you're applying and what's the reality of pursuing these awards. So in that vein, we routinely do a lot of data analysis. That's dropped recently with the lack of or with some of the shortages we've had in staff, but it's a priority that we continue and we're going to continue doing and presenting at all the talks that we give. But so to present the reality of what's going on in our training and career development programs, we do this analysis. So if you want to change to the next slide, Tish, looking at applicant success rate. So this is unique applicants. This isn't like application success rate, which I think has limited insight into the process. This is of all the people that actually tried to get unique individuals that actually tried to get either K08 or K23. About 50% of them get something. So these aren't white whales. They're not unobtainable. They're definitely within reach. 1 in 2 people that actually try and continue to try get either K08 or K23 from NINDS. Next slide, Tish. Now, to add a little bit more nuance to that data, doesn't mean that the success rate is 50%. The reality is, more often than not, your first application is not going to get funded. So you've got to persist. It pays to persist. So this data that we're showing you here is a range of people that weren't funded on their initial application. They had a score from 21 to 40, 41 to 60, or 61 greater, including applications that were not discussed. And the people that received this on their initial application that did reapply, these are the number of unique individuals and applications that were put in. And we can see for the folks that scored pretty well, like in 21 to 40 that reapplied, nearly all of them got their grant on the resubmission. 41 to 60, nearly 3/4 got it, and 61 plus, including not discussed, it's about 38–40%. Actually, interesting thing was when we looked at the individuals that actually received a not discussed instead of a numerical impact score, they actually had a higher success rate. They had, I think it was about 42% upon reapplying. And it might take, multiple, reapplications in this population that of applicants that we looked at from 2012 to 2019. There's people that applied one time. There's people that applied up to 4 or 5 times. And in this population, only about 50% of our folks reapply. So we want to encourage you, don't beat yourself up if you don't get it on your first try. The reality is 80% of people aren't going to get it on their first try. So expect that. If you get it on your first try, that's great. But expect that you're going to have to revise. You're going to have to improve your plan to become a better scientist. You're going to just have to take those comments that you get from review to heart and incorporate them into your next submission. The other thing is, you got to just stay dogged too. We understand there's realities to clinical, clinical pressures that you may have, but if you can apply, please reapply. Don't be a one and done. Plenty of people reapply 2, 3, 4 times and get a grant. Next slide, Tish. And now further along this pipeline now, so once you actually get a K, we want to present what is the reality when you get in that pipeline and you're training as an NNDS K recipient. Next slide. So the reality is once you're in the mix, the likelihood that you're going to make it to the next step, which the next step is what we're considering independence. So an R01 or equivalent award is pretty high. So 70% success rate within that population of K08 applicants and a 66% success rate in the population of K23 applicants that we looked at. And this isn't even taking into account there's other federal funding, so DoD money, FDA money, private foundation funding. If we actually quantified that, I have no doubt, just as we do with like our K12 programs, no doubt that these numbers would be even greater. It'd probably be up in similar numbers, probably pretty close to 80%. So if you get in the mix, most likely you're going to make it to the next step. Tish, next slide. I don't know if I have any more. And then we've also broken it down by speciality, subspeciality, just to look at, are there any gaps? Are there any disparities between specialties? You can see most people are around 70, anywhere from 70 to 75%. Obviously, the neurosurgery population has higher output, or is 67% success rate of this K to R transition. And this, dovetails nicely with the data that we have from the K12, the NRCDP K12 outcome data. Next slide, I think. Is this back to you, Tish? Yes.
Yep, it's back to me. Okay. How are we for time?
We got another 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if anyone had any questions at this point about any of the data. We can continue on and talk about the updates and like our resources, and we can talk at the end if that's fine.
Tish or Kay, do you have any data on neurosurgeons that skipped K award and just went from like say K12 to R01 or directly to R01?
Yeah, we have data on that. I can't remember off the top of my head if we've looked at it. We've certainly collected it, and we could probably populate it. And there are plenty of people that skip especially if you get the K12 funding. Some I'd probably say about within the NRCDP, probably half of the people skip just by, I don't know, or don't get it and just move on to the R01 instead of doggedly pursuing the K.
Because I think one of the challenges is how the K is structured is, the majority of the funds go towards salary support, which depending on how your department is organized, you may not need salary support, but you need money for experiments and people, which you can't really use the K funding for in a major way.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I think that's an issue. And I think, again, I think a lot of people go straight to the K08 or K23, but definitely going for an R01 is totally appropriate. We didn't want to go totally crazy with data. We have more data, but we even have data looking at like if you should go after an R01 or an R21, and the data for R21s, you have a high, I think a 1/3 higher success rate. If you go after that as sort of your first grant rather than an R21. But I think if you feel like you're ready and thinking about going after the R01, I think that's something that you can certainly reach out to us. We often do have lots of conversations with people who are seeking advice on, well, should I go for the K08 or should I go for a K23 or am I ready for an R01? We talk to people about that, folks in our scientific clusters and subject matter experts, sort of the traditional POs or program officers. They're in the conversations about this. So if that is a path that you're going to consider and you're not sure about it, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you navigate that decision as well. Because sometimes people
Tish,
they don't need to
yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, since the topic is coming up, I actually wrote it down as a question. Um, um, Maybe I could just say a couple things from my own perspective, and I'd love to hear what other senior people. I see Dave Limbrick, Seppi, Langston, Melanie, I think's online. If other people's thoughts, but my general, when this comes up, I think the heart of it is, are you ready? And the only way to know if you're ready, I think, is to review it with mentors, plural, like, several people, not one. I think you should review it with, your program officer or Tish or Kay or others at the NINDS who can also help inform your decision. And then I think in the end, you have to synthesize what you hear from those different people, again, multiple people, and then figure out, are you ready or not? And make your own decision. The example I give on this is Jen Straley, who got a K12 and then came to me. I was not the chair. I was just someone who was, more senior person trying to help her. And she asked me whether she, looked at all of her data, where she was, papers and so forth. Should she apply for a K08 or an R award? And I recommended K08, but other mentors recommended the R. She went for the R and got the R. So I think you need to synthesize it, but getting multiple opinions from people that you trust, know that they have your best interest at heart. That's where you want to start, I think. And then from there you can build it out. I think you're totally right. The K award alone is not going to fund your lab. The way I did it was K award plus at least 2 foundation grants at any one time to try to keep things moving while you're working on the R. So those would be my general big picture thoughts. If anybody else on the line would want to comment on that, please do.
Maybe I'll just say a word or two. So, I know this is kind of obvious, but it's not all about the science. I think the career development part of the K is really what's so critical. So it's true, maybe the research funding isn't quite as high or really anywhere near as high, but the protected time at that stage in your career, I think, is probably worth more. I think that's really the most important thing, to have a supportive department, a supportive chair, and the support and protected time really is how you kind of have sustained success in your kind of research career.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll just,
All right.
I appreciate you saying that, Dave. That's really the linchpin of these mechanisms, is that protected time for research and mentorship. So if you don't need mentorship, if you're ready to go, and as Greg was saying, if you're getting the feedback that, hey, you should just go for the R, go for the R. Now, the question of, do I have funds to support what you're proposing? And that's why it is mentored. That's why you do identify, mentors that have some available funds that could support your project. In addition, if you are covering a portion of your salary and your chair would be willing, there's things that they can do to provide startup funds, additional funds, towards your actual pursuit of establishing your lab. Now, that is going on behind the scenes, and that's for you to kind of talk with your chair, with your mentors. But there's all different ways, that you can get this done. And I've seen people get this done where they apply. Then, they're already in a faculty position, but there's some incentive for getting the K to support them gives them the protected time, gives them a little bit more funds to develop as a scientist. And then it's a lot easier path where your feet aren't necessarily held to the flame so quickly to get your own independent funding in such a short time. I mean, if you can do it, that's great, but that it's not a one size fits all. It doesn't work for everybody.
And Ms. Wygant, I'm sorry, did you say that what was the difference between the R01 and the R21 in terms of success rates that you'd mentioned?
I think the success rate for the R01 is like 66%, and the R21 is like 30-ish%. Kay, you might know off the top of your head.
Yeah.
But I think the issue there, hold just one second, okay. The issue there is that the R21, I think you can't get bogged down in the success rates. It's really good to know that they're there. I think the reason why we did that analysis in the first place is because that people will be like, well, I don't know. I think I might be beyond a K. I'm ready for an R, but I don't want to go all the way for an R01 because an R21 might be easier to get because it's, you know, shorter duration, smaller award. And that really is not the way to think about it, and that's not accurate, right? Because when you look at the data, it doesn't bear out. There are, though, in that case, in that said, there are situations where the R21 is the more appropriate mechanism, right? It's the more appropriate award for the type of research you're doing, the project you're thinking about, the time you're going to have to devote to it, et cetera. So you have to kind of be careful about it. But I think the idea here is not to be intimidated by the R01 and be like, well, I'm ready to apply for an R, but I'm like, I don't know if I can go for the R01 yet, so I'm going to try for an R21. Go for an R21 if that's the best mechanism for the work that you're doing, but don't be, you know, and go for an R01 if that's best, right? And that's again something that your mentors and folks at NIH can help you navigate.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in, just echo what Tish was saying. You know, R21, it's an exploratory grant. It's not R01 light. It's designed to be something where it's high risk, high reward. So if you're R01 light, wait to get enough data to apply for an R01. If you're proposing a very exploratory grant and you have the skill set to do that, and reviewers are going to look at your capabilities as a researcher to kind of look at the risk and manage that risk, then yeah, you can apply for an R21. Also, as an early stage investigator, applying for an R01, you have the benefit of the ESI bump, the percentile bump, which is most institutes will give you a 10 percentile bump in the pay line. So meaning if the standard R01 pay line for an established investigator was 10%, if you scored within the 20th percentile and there was no other issues with the grant, most likely you'd get funded as an ESI investigator. So that's how it's a little bit easier to apply for the R01 versus an R21. And then we have the data that bears that out.
Thank you.
All right, I think we could keep going, Tish. Thanks.
All right. So turning to just general NIH and updates from NIH and NNDS, given all of the change that's been going on for the past year, and it's continuing, it's ongoing. So I think my screen is stuck. Okay, here we go. So the first thing, this is just at the very highest level at NIH. There's, as everyone knows, there's a new NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya. There's new scientific priorities, not new, but scientific priorities that he released. And this is something that I think it's just good to know that, you know, that at the NIH level, there's still a commitment to training future biomedical scientists. So the space that we occupy is still being supported. There's a high focus on rigor, which is something that NINDS has always been way out in front of. There's a lot of focus on Gen AI. There will be probably some, as you'll hear more about, these highlighted topics that are going to be coming out. I believe we're going to probably be coming out with one in the training space around training folks for Gen AI in various spaces. But there are other things here that I think it's just good to be aware of as you're thinking about what kinds of projects you want to put forward during this time, and things that you may want to hold back for the future, or to submit to a different funding stream. But here are some of the things that are sort of on the minds of and in the priorities of the leaders at NIH. Now, with respect to NINDS, our philosophy with all of the different things that have been kind of out there, it's like we've really kind of tried to stay the same to the extent that we can, right? We still value investigator initiative research, still supporting basic research, still trying to support research that's patient-based. But I think with respect to our training space here, I think it's really important to just continue to note that, we're going to continue our commitment to uphold the future of neuroscience research. And we have been able to do that despite the many, many changes that have come in terms of policies and just procedures and the way things are done at NIH. We're holding steady. We're going to continue to support folks in your demographic, in your population, in your community, hopefully to the extent, if not beyond, what we've done in the past. So that commitment remains, and the ability to keep on going, the path is there. We get a lot of questions about work related to health disparities, particularly when we're talking to clinicians. And so we just want to note that we are still committed at NNDS to supporting research in the space. And if there are questions about anything that you might have in an application or a patient population that you might be using, or subjects in a study, et cetera, you can reach out to either Sharice Sankar or Richard Benson. They are very happy to help individuals. They're the folks in our institute who really operate in the space and have their finger on the pulse of any kind of changes or updates in how to navigate getting applications funded that include these topics. So do reach out if you have anything in that space. Some key updates. Now, Walter Korshad published a director's message when he was still in the driver's seat a couple months ago, and that's linked here. I wanted to he really was just sharing with the world the key updates and kind of summarizing them for everyone of these changes that have gone on at NIH. So we think this is a useful space to you can go to the full director's message if you want to get more detail, but here are some of the key changes that people should be aware of. So first of all, as many of you know, the Center for Scientific Review, which is NIH's sort of central review sort of shop, is now reviewing all applications that come in. So the way this used to be was that all of the NIH Central had its own Center for Scientific Review that reviewed, for example, all the R01s went there. The sort of fellowship awards, so like the F30s, the F31s for graduate students, med students, postdocs that were F and not Ks, they most of those went to CSR. So they did those reviews, and then all of the 27 institutes, I don't know if all 27, but most of the institutes had their own review branch. So NINDS had our own branch, and we would review all of our specialized programs through there, right? So all of our K awards were reviewed in-house. The institutional programs that I talked to you about, those would be reviewed in-house. And we had a lot more, like in our seat, so we're considered program, and review is considered review, right? Program and review were able to interact a lot more. We were able to kind of help review, interpret some of the things that we were looking for in the requirements in our programs, so that they could then communicate that information to reviewers, who would then be able to review the applications, sort of really well aligned with the funding opportunities and the requirements of those. Now everything is at CSR, and there's a giant firewall. So we don't have a lot of engagement with the review officers there, certainly not with the reviewers in general. And they have taken on, this is an enormous job, right? Because now all of a sudden, like, all of these applications are coming that used to be reviewed in other places. And so they have been kind of getting organized, getting that whole operation up off the ground. And I think they're still working out a lot of the nuances, but I would just keep this in mind, that when your application is going to come in, the audience may be a little bit broader, a little bit different in terms of the reviewers that are going to read your application. If they're not going to be anything wild, right? It's not like they're going to be people that completely are from a different field or anything, but it might be a little bit more broad. And then you might have seen when they were coming straight into NINDS. So do keep that in mind. I do have one update. In the last few council rounds, I guess this started in May when CSR started reviewing all the applications. For the last rounds up until now, K awards have been reviewed differently. Sometimes they're in study sections with R01s and other R awards. Sometimes they're in study sections only that have K applications being reviewed. My understanding is that going forward from the next round of applications that are going to come in, which will go to the May Council, for example, I believe they're moving Ks to K only study sections, so they won't be in study sections sprinkled in with R01s or anything anymore. They'll just B and K specific study sections, which I think is a good step and a good move in the right direction. So that's important information to be aware of. The second box in the middle and the top is that currently the different institutes, there's like information about the funding opportunity announcements, the grants that NIH funds, all of the policies, procedures, etc. You can find all of that information on grants.gov, but there's also lots of information, additional information, deeper information, more nuanced information on the websites of each of the individual institutes, right? So NINDS, we have our own training website. We have all our training mechanisms listed on there and lots of resources for people that are applying for grants through NINDS. A lot of that information is going to now be housed at grants.gov. So you could potentially see some changes as you're starting like navigating and looking up information. It's slowly kind of rolling out as information is being migrated away from the institute websites onto this grants.gov site. There'll be things that'll be, there'll be sections that'll be like an NINDS section, an NIDDK section, etc. But it's all migrating. So do be aware of that as you're looking for information. And if you come upon, if you're looking for something, you can't find it, definitely reach out to us and let us know. So we can help you find the information first of all, but also we can be giving feedback to those that are working to migrate this content, that people are not having the easiest time navigating and finding important stuff. So those changes you'll probably see as you're looking for things. There has been sort of a requirement now to reduce the number of notices of funding opportunities. So these are the different kinds of funding opportunity announcements that go out that you apply under for funding. There are hundreds of these across all of NIH, and I think there, it can be very confusing to try to figure out which one is appropriate to apply under. So we are all being tasked with seeing where we can sort of reduce the number of funding opportunities, where we can combine things under like one opportunity instead of having like 3 different ones. So you're going to see lots of changes in that space going forward. Even with the way that the funding opportunity, the different kinds of mechanisms are named, right? You may see changes. It may not be R01, it may be R something else, and other things might be involved in there, not just an R01 under all one announcement. But the funding instruments and the way the funds go out the door and what they provide, et cetera, will remain the same. You just may see changes in the opportunities that you would apply under, or the way that like these different programs are named. So bear with us as we're making all of this transition, because it's pretty overwhelming. It's a lot of work to do and a lot of details to pay attention to. NIH has moved to this highlighted topics model now, where in order to communicate, I think in the past there have been sort of NOCs, like notices of special interest, or specialized kind of funding opportunities called RFAs, that would be put out if there was an interest in sort of supporting research under a certain area, right? Now they're moving to this highlighted topic kind of model, where these highlighted topics will be put out saying, this institute NINDS has an interest in funding, research in X, Y, or Z, right? For example, I think I mentioned earlier, training in generative AI. There may be a highlighted topic in that, and you'll see these are, I believe, housed probably in grants.gov. Where in the various websites, where you'll be able to see what the highlighted topics are, and if you have research that's relevant, or you can cook up a project that would fit into that, by all means do. As everyone knows, there are new requirements for foreign components in grants. That landscape, I think, changes a bit here and there. I think some of it, I think there are probably different reasons for it, but one of the issues was that there would be foreign components, and there was really no one at NIH was really tracking how those funds were being administered. It was just kind of happening. And so I think they're trying to get a handle on that, so that you can account for like where things are going, what is going in any of your applications or projects you're proposing. Certainly reach out to us so that we can help you navigate that landscape and make sure that you do everything according to the new rules, so that those kinds of funds are able to go out the door if they fall within policy. And finally, NINDS and all of NIH is really moving away from Payline. This is not going to be impactful for us in any of the training space, because we've never had Payline in the training space. We always fund where, the applications, when we look at the summary statements, where the critiques go from this is good to go out the door now, or to this needs to come back after a revision. So it's not going to change in our training space. We'll continue business as usual. But this is going to change in the RO1 world. It's going to change across, all the monies that go out the door. So I think currently everyone is kind of working on, coming up with their sort of guidelines for how funding decisions are going to be made, so that everything can be accountable and consistent. So as all of these changes are unfolding, more information will be disseminated, but do continue to be patient. We are working really hard to try to get things implemented, but at the same time keeps the train going down the tracks. And so with that, I'll hand things back to Kay to take us home.
I'm trying to be cognizant of the time. We have 8 minutes. I don't know if Sophie, Greg, are we going to share these slides with the participants, with the attendees?
We are happy to. Sophie, we could do that, right? I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to go through these resources if there's no questions, but we want to
let's see if there's some questions first, Kay. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. While people are thinking about their questions, let me just throw one out at you. One thing that we can all, no matter how we slice and dice it right now, I think most people feel like the NIH federal funding level is under threat, and may be like that for a period of time, which is going to make things more difficult. Maybe it's just temporary and just for a year or so, but if it's more prolonged, could you just comment on how, from your perspective, what you've seen over time, how the NIH handles, or the NINDS handles this as it relates to the junior investigator? Because people are worried. A lot of people who are in the stage that people who are on this webinar, that the junior investigator is going to get lost in all that. And if you could describe your approach to that, because I know that the NIH takes that seriously and doesn't want to lose a generation of clinician scientists. So any comments about that particular question?
Yep, absolutely. I would say, first of all, we have a budget that was just passed after the mini shutdown, and NIH funding levels are going to stay the same as they did last year. So there's not a cut to our budget. And hopefully things will continue in that vein. With respect to how we're handling things in the training space, before all of the changes in the past year, there were already concerns about what was going on with the budget, et cetera. And I can tell you that when we see that coming down the pike well in advance, right? 2 years ago, we were having meetings at NINDS to talk about where we were going to go with our budget, where cuts needed to happen, what needed to be protected. And through all of this, from 2 years ago all the way to this very day, NINDS has stayed committed to protecting the budget for the training and career development space. The only thing that really changed, so our budget has really remained flat. We've been spending the same money for the last 3 years, and we're planning to spend the same money this year as we did in the last year, right? So those funds are there. The only thing that's changed in the space is there were actually a couple of places where we were well over budget. We were funding more than what we had actually planned, and the only thing we've really changed is that we've come back to the actual budget that we're supposed to be in. But we are not experiencing any cuts, and we're trying to protect the training space, at least at NINDS. And I think that's true across NIH to the extent that it's possible. But this is something that the leadership takes very seriously. The Institute takes very seriously. If we can't fund the trainees, there's not going to be a future. So keep putting your applications in, right? The money's still flowing.
Yeah, I like to tell everybody, the clinicians that I talk to, not to sell my PhD brethren short, but we're a dime a dozen. The clinician scientists are harder to bring to the table, and we recognize that. And a lot of the strides that Steve, Tish, others in leadership has made, and gains that we've made in this space, we don't want to retreat. We don't want to lose those. And so Walter, Amy, other folks in leadership, we've had conversations with them to look at absolute dollar amounts, number of trainees, all that stuff to make sure, hey, we're not dropping the ball with this. We're still committed. We're still, because we've seen these especially in the neurosurgeon population, just grow over the past 10 years. So we don't want to lose those gains that we've made through our other programs that we already are committing a lot of money to. So, I wouldn't be too concerned about a retreat, even if our budget, didn't maintain flat. Walter, before he left, was like, this is an area, the institutional grants, the commission Ks, we're going to prioritize those, first.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for making that point. I think everybody on the line really appreciates you saying it so emphatically and directly. So thank you. Any questions from the group that you'd like to ask while we have a few minutes left?
Yeah, I have one. I'm Brandon Luckywold. I've talked to Kay and Tish in the past already multiple times. Thank you very much for the great information. I am endovascular trained, transitioning into a faculty role. I just wanted to see any advice or guidance in terms of changing institutions and some of the support that's needed in terms of getting off the ground at a new place and how to build successful K award applications when you don't necessarily have data at that new institution.
Yeah, I've been.
Oh, go ahead, Tish.
Oh no, Kay, you can go ahead. You're individual K award guy. Go. Your name is Kay.
It's always a challenge. I mean, especially if you are far away from your new institution, if you have no connection there. I mean, really, in the planning phase, you should be hopefully identifying a primary mentor at that new institution, having them connect you with the resources that they have in their Office of Sponsored Programs or Grants Office, they're all different names, Office of Research Administration, just to see what's available so that you can eventually submit your K using all of their available resources. So they should have information on facilities and resources, standard agreements already in place. And really, it's just up to you to come up with an idea based on where you want to go, based on your prior trajectory. And there's nothing wrong with submitting your application before you get there. One component of your application is going to be your institutional commitment letter, which will come from your eventual chair of your department, so wherever you're going. And reviewers are looking for some indication that you're going to be having all the support that you have, the protected time for research. If they can offer you any other support, startup personnel support, that would be amazing. But they just need to reiterate that when you arrive and when this grant is supposed to begin, you'll be there, you'll be in actual, faculty, and you'll be ready to go. So that's really the crux of what we're looking for in the application. So you certainly can do this. And a number of people, more than a small number of people, have done this successfully.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Looks like we got about another minute or two. Any other questions we could answer? Well, thanks, Tish and Kay and Marguerite and Amy, if she's still on the line, for making the call. Really means a lot for you all to make it and help us all with our work with the junior residents and fellows and junior faculty on their careers. So it really means a lot to us. Sophie will work on getting the slides out. Appreciate you making them available to all of us. I saw in the chat that the NANDS roster it was posted. So if you're looking for contact information from anybody on the line or otherwise, maybe that would be a good place to look. And again, our next webinar is in 2 months on April 20-something first.
21st.
21st. It'll be posted on the NRCDP website, which is also in the chat if anybody doesn't know our website. And I think that's it. I hope you all have a good night, and thanks everybody for making the webinar. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.